What up? I'm EuGene V Byrd III, artist, designer, business owner, curator, and former college teacher, and this is Artrepreneur. Artrepreneur is a professional artist virtual experience funded by the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. And for those that don't know, I'm the owner of Future Gallery and the founder of FutureDeadArtists. And our main aim is to provide a thriving art ecology. So this is perfect because it speaks directly to that. I'm going to share a few things that I learned over the years with you, and hopefully it'll provide a spark for you to continue that learning, for you to create and get paid. So let's get started with phase one. Screen printing. So, what is screen printing? All right, let's see. Screen printing is a printing technique where a mesh is used to transfer ink onto a substrate, as set in areas made impenetrable by the ink by a blocking stencil. A blade or squeegee is moved across the screen to fill the open mesh apertures with ink. A reverse stroke then causes the screen to touch the substrate monetarily along the line of contact. This causes the ink to wet the substrate and be pulled out of the mesh apertures as the screen springs back after the blade has passed. One color is printed at a time, so several screens could be like, yo, forget all that. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do from start to finish, and I'm going to make it easy for you, right from my home studio. Let's go. Now for me personally, I'm not really interested into learning or investing money into anything that I can't incorporate into my art practice. That's what I love about screen printing. It's a fine art medium as well as a legitimate business practice. I mean, it's the best of both worlds. I can't front, I really love it. For this virtual experience, I'm going to focus on apparel screen printing. That's where you're going to get your immediate return on investment. Now I'm going to take you step by step and show you the entire process of screen printing. We're going to come across equipment, and I'm going to point out that equipment as we come to it. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to do a complete summary of the equipment list. Alright, y'all. Enough of setting the stage. Let's get to it. Like all great things, it always starts at the ideal. Once you got that dope idea that you're ready to screen print, now you got to get that idea out your head into something tangible. Now, there's several ways you can do this with screen printing. For our exercise, we're going to use the computer, which brings us to equipment number one. And once you got this machine, don't even play around. Invest in Adobe Creative Suite. So once you got your idea, you got your software, you got your computer, now you're ready to rock. Of course, I'm going to print the FDA logo. Once I'm happy with my design, I'll add crop marks to the image so I can center my graphic on the screen. And then I'm going to print this out on transparency paper. This is inkjet transparency paper. I buy my paper on a roll because it's cheaper and I can cut it to the length I need. But if you prefer, you can buy this in sheets. Which brings us to our next piece of equipment, a printer. I use an inkjet Epson Workforce 1100. I had this thing since college. If you treat it right, these things will last forever. So you had your dope idea, you designed it on the computer, and you printed out your lovely graphic on inkjet transparency film. This is what you use to expose the screen. So then you have to get your image onto the screen. This is a screen for screen printing. But before you do that, you have to coat the entire screen with photo emulsion. And these screens come in several different mesh counts, but I don't want to overwhelm you at the beginning. But if you're starting off and you're buying a screen for apparel, you're kind of safe with a 160 mesh count, possibly even a 110. So once you have your screen, you have to coat it with emulsion. Now it's very similar to darkroom emulsion. You have to be in an environment with no UV light. Now, when I started off screen printing, I did everything in my garage. When it was time to expose, I simply turned off the UV lights, turned on my UV safe light, which is actually a bug light, and then I exposed. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have a separate exposure room, which is the best environment. But if you don't got that, I'm telling you, don't let that stop you. Go ahead and get in the game. Now, I'm going to show you my exposure room and show you how to coat a screen. Welcome to my exposure room. And this is just a storage room that I have in my basement. But if you don't have a particular room like this, you can still make it work. So now I'm in a safe environment where I can go ahead and coat my screen with photo emulsion. So I take my emulsion and I pour it in what's called a scoop coater. You put the emulsion in here and then you're going to use this to coat the screen. So I'm going to take my photo emulsion and I'm going to pour the emulsion into the scoop coater. Alright, so I got my emulsion in the scoop coater. I want to make sure that it's pretty level, and then I'm going to take the edge of the scoop coater and press it all the way up against the screen. Because it is a liquid, I don't want the emulsion spilling down, so I'm going to place the edge firmly up against the screen, and then once I'm comfortable, I'm going to tilt it to where the emulsion drains toward the screen. Then I'm going to slowly drag up. So I have the emulsion in there, it's pretty leveled out. Now I got it firmly against the screen. And then once I'm comfortable and I'm looking at the emulsion, I can see what it's doing. I'm going to tilt it all the way to the screen and slowly drag up. And as you can see, the screen is getting coated with emulsion. And then I slowly start going back to when I'm to the edge so it doesn't spill out. And then I zigzag up to get any drips from the edge. That's a nice coated screen. But no matter how good you are, it probably isn't that smooth. You want a nice smooth coat. So all you do is just scrape. This time I'm going to go across it, but I'm not going to let any emulsion out. You know, I was screen printing for years before I figured this out. So this is a nice little tip if you're coating screens. Make sure you scrape it to make sure it's nice and level. So I just scrape up. Now I have a perfectly coated screen. But you got to do both sides. So you turn it over, flip it over, and then you do the exact same thing. And this time I'm on the inside of the screen. Always remember to do the inside of the screen last. So on the inside of the screen, I'm just going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to place the scoop coater firmly on the edge of the screen. Then I'm going to tilt it over to let the emulsion, let gravity do its thing and go to the screen. And what I'm looking at and I see is there, then I'm going to slowly go up. Zigzag to get any potential drips. Pretty good, but just as insurance, I'm going to go ahead and scrape to make sure my screen is coated very evenly. That's important for a good exposure time. So put it there, but I'm not tilting because I don't want any emulsion coming out. I'm just scraping. Bam, perfect. Now, you gotta let this thing dry. You want to let it dry for, depends on how humid your environment is, but I usually don't like to go less than 8 hours. So, and you're going to now put this on the dry rack and just let it do its thing. And you store it this way, frame up, screen down to let gravity pull the emulsion where you want it to be. So I'm going to put it in my dry rack like this. Take it to my dry rack, put it here. That one too smooth. Take it. Put it there. Then it's a waiting game. Then I gotta let that screen emulsion dry and harden for a good 8 hours at least. Sometimes you just want to let it set 24 hours. I just wanted to give you a little closer look at the dry rack. And like I said, I made this myself. And then I got some wood for my slits. Put them in there so I can slide my screens into the dry rack. And then I just put some wheels on the bottom of it so I can roll this around. Not overly complicated. You can do this too. This is my exposure box. It's just a box, so I feel confident that I can make it. And I have several lights in here to expose my screen. It has a glass top on it, and I just route it within the wood so the glass would just sit right on top of there. And then I just bought a row of lights, and I daisy chained them together. And I have switches right here to turn the box on. For my timer, I just use my phone timer, and I just unplug it. Save myself several $1,000s by making it myself. And I have my lid. The lid is heavy. When you buy them, they have these hydraulic arms. Yeah, I went old school. I got counter lever weights. You know what I'm saying? So this is my exposure box, and I'm going to show you it in action. How do you expose the screen on this thing? I know some of this seems foreign, but at the end, it all makes sense. Now let me show you exactly how to expose the screen. So you put your image directly onto the screen, and to expose correctly, remember to flip it to the other side to have the mirror image of the graphic. And then you want to make sure that your image is centered onto the screen before you expose it. So I have center marks marked on the screen, and I also have crop marks marked on the transparency of the graphic. So I'm going to take my trusty T-square, put it on the center of the screen, line up the T with the crop marks so I can make sure that my graphic is centered and straight. Once I'm confident that it's straight, then I'm going to take some tape and tape the transparency directly to the screen to make sure it doesn't move, but also to make sure it's directly onto the screen. I don't want any light coming in on the outside of the transparency. Hence, that's why some exposure boxes have the vacuum seals. It's going to suck that transparency right to the screen. So then once you tape the screen onto there, you flip it to the other side to where the glass is directly against the screen. So when I wash out the screen, the part that's going to get washed out is the black images. So you either have your vacuum top or you just simply weigh it down, which is what I do. You know, you can use whatever you want, use books, and use weights. It don't matter. They don't have to look pretty. You just have to have a solid contact with that screen. So you can do the vacuum or just old school, weigh that joker down. Then I'm going to lower my top. Now I have to actually turn on the UV light to expose the screen. So with my homemade exposure box, I just use my cell phone as the timer, and I have my time set to 1 minute and 36 seconds. So I'm going to plug it up and start the timer. And as you can see, that's the black light. If you can see some of this light spilling out. And then I just let that thing go for 1 minute and 30. Turn off my light, turn off my timer. I'm going to open my box back up. Now I can remove my transparency. And the screen is exposed. And then I'm going to take this to the washout booth that you'll see in a second, and the image will come into the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and put my screen in my washout booth. Now, I got this nice washout booth because I've been screen printing a while and I made the necessary investments. But before I started, I used to put this on the side of my house outside and just use my water hose and washed out the screen. So what I'm trying to tell you is if you get into the game, you know, you can do a step at a time to see if this is for you. And make it do what it do, man. No limitations, no excuses. So if you got to do that joker outside with a regular old water hose, that's what you do. But you know what I'm saying? I got my game up. I done leveled up a little bit. So I got my washout booth. I got my pressure washer. It's going to make it a whole lot easier for me. And again, when I was outside, I didn't have no pressure washer. I just had a regular water hose with a regular nozzle. And it did what it did at the time being. So I'm going to go ahead and wash out the screen, and you'll see what's going to happen. It's like magic. This is the fun part. It's beautiful. I'm about to have a little fun. This is the fun part. So we have a perfectly exposed screen for printing. Let this joker dry, and let's get to the sexy part. Let's get to printing. That's the part that everybody just likes. You know what I'm saying? They come to my studio and they screen print. They think they screen print. They just skipped all the other stuff I just showed you. But it's all good. That's the sexy part because it's the part you actually get to see, you know what I'm saying, the fruit of your labor. So now we're going to get to actually printing. All right. Now before I go on a break and let this screen dry, let's go over the equipment that we encountered so far. First is a computer. You gotta have a computer. Without the computer, you can't do nothing. Don't even play around. Just get the Adobe Creative Suite. You're gonna be able to need to print out the transparency. So you're gonna need an inkjet printer. Then you're ready to expose the screen. So before you can do that, you gotta have a screen, at least one. So you're gonna have to get a screen. And then a scoop coater that's going to aid you in coating the screen. You're going to have to let the screen dry properly. So you're going to have to get a dry rack. Then you're going to be ready to expose. So then you're going to need an exposure box. So that's the equipment that we encountered so far. Not too bad to start a business. And that's just to get to exposing the screen. We haven't even talked about actually screen printing yet. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You really don't have to get none of that if you don't want to. There are companies that do coat, expose the transparency, and expose the screen for you. You can even pay me, I'll take your money. I mean, that's a viable action, especially when you're first starting out. You can get a printing press in an apartment and you can just really outsource getting your screens exposed. Or you're just not interested in exposing and you just, man, I don't want to get into that. I just want to actually print. Then you can pay people to expose your screens. But what I really want you to do at this point, which is like the halfway point, is not to feel overwhelmed or discouraged. You can do this. As long as you believe that you can do it, you can definitely do it. It's not too difficult. I'm telling you, I learned screen printing from watching YouTube and books. That's how I learned it, and it was very painful. Wish I had a tool like this, but I really just want you to know that it is definitely possible. So now my screen is totally dry, so it's time to set up the press. You know, this is my printing press. My particular press is a Vestec 1000. It's kind of a medium level manual screen print press. You can get in the game without spending a ton of money, and it's been good to me. So this is a 6 head, which means I can put up 6 screens, so I can print 6 color jobs. It's a 4 pallet. This is where I put the shirts on. So I can put 4 shirts at a time. This rotates. And if I have multiple colors, the screen has rotate. And when I'm ready to print, you know, you put it down and you print. So I'll go over all that, but I just wanted to kind of introduce you to my girl right here. So now we're about to go ahead and set up our press. Get it ready for screen printing. I have my center line on my palette. I'm going to match this center line up with the crop marks on my screen. Make sure it's center, and it is. Then I'm going to tighten up my print head. Alright, that's cool. Now I have to block out these edges with tape to make sure no ink goes there. This tape is made for screen printing. This is called split tape. First thing I do is I just cut all the pieces I need to the length of the screen. I kind of just get everything together. I haven't placed it where it needs to be yet. I'm just still prepping. I'm going to come here. I'm going to start on this back piece. I'm going to press it onto the screen. Get on the screen first, then on the wall. Do the same thing over here. So again, I'm going to get it ready with my fingers before I apply it. Kind of got it folded in kind of half already on the edges. I'm going to apply it onto the screen first. Get it on the screen, and then come back, apply it onto the wall. I don't want no ink getting through this seal. And then repeat. Alright, got all my edges secured. Alright, no ink is going to get into there. Now I'm ready to fill the screen with ink. I'm using white ink for this, and I'm printing black T's. Alright, that's plenty. More than enough. Once I pass the squeegee, then it's going to press down onto the substrate to allow the ink to touch. And then as the squeegee moves through, the screen is going to bounce back off and give you off contact. That's what off contact is. It's very important to get quality prints. White ink is a lot thicker than any other color ink. So when you're starting out and you're a beginning screen printer, don't start with white. Start with black ink first. That's going to be the easiest ink to print with. I always want to do a test print first. I don't want to mess up on the shirt that I spend money on. Then I'm going to coat the screen. Coat the screen is just coating the whole screen with white. You're not printing yet. You're just going to coat it. So with white, I'm going to want to coat the screen, and by coating, it just means you're covering the screen with ink. You're not pushing it hard enough to go through and get on the garment. Bring that ink back and coat the entire screen. Now the screen is coated and ready for a push stroke, and we're going to screen print. One foot in front of the other. Then remember, we're off contact. Push down on the screen. Got my footwork right. Now let's do a nice strong push. I always go twice. Let's go. Let's see what we got on this test shirt. All right, not bad. And the thing about white, you always do it twice. So I have to run it through the flash, which I'll show you that in a second, and put some heat on it, which is going to dry the ink a little bit. Now this right here is called a flash dryer. On the bottom of this, it basically looks like a big toaster oven. What it's doing is heating up the ink to dry it. Move my palette. It goes under it just like that. And it doesn't take long, it's just kind of my working flow. That's the flash dryer. So when I say flash it, that's what I mean. So with white ink, I'm gonna print, flash, print. All right, let's rock. Every time I do this, it's at least $5. And I literally do this thousands of times a year. Now imagine if this is art, every time I do this, the bare minimum might be $100. Could be $1,000. I don't like talking numbers, but I'm just giving you an idea. Like printing money. Woo! This right here, that's the conveyor dryer. I just sent it through the conveyor dryer. The conveyor dryer is the very last step. I'll show you that in a second. Woo, that thing perfect! Nice. Now what the conveyor dryer is doing is actually curing the ink. It makes sure that the ink does not wash out of your shirt. If you ever had a screen print tee and the ink just started to fall out, that's because the shirt was not cured properly. The ink needs to cure at least 320 degrees, and it needs to pass through that dryer for at least 20 seconds, if not more. But you don't want to get the shirt too hot because it can burn the shirt. But it needs to get to at least 320 degrees to make sure that your tees always stay crispy. So you need you a good conveyor dryer. This is life or death right here. You can't take shortcuts on that. But yeah, 320 degrees, you ain't got nothing to worry about. And when they come out the conveyor dryer, the shirt is good to go. It's ready to be worn. It's ready to be sold. I just let them fall into the basket. That's the complete process. But I need to make sure they're 320 degrees. How do you do that? Well, you take a temperature reading, of course. You take a heat gun, you put it on the ink, and you ensure that it's at 320. Once it's at 320, you ain't got nothing to worry about. It's just time to get paid. It was a beautiful thing, ain't it? Ooh, it's like cha-ching. That's it. I'm rocking it. Let me pop my collar. You know what I'm saying? That's a complete process from start to finish. Let's run down the equipment. You need a computer. You need software, preferably Adobe Suite. Really only Adobe Suite. Don't play around. You need a printer. You need a dry rack. You need an exposure box. You need a washout booth. You need a printing press. You're going to need some screens. That should be obvious. You need a flash dryer, and you need a conveyor dryer. Those things, you got a business. You're going to write your own ticket. You can make a lot of money. You can make pretty much as much money as you want to, or you got to be good. But if you promote, you're going to make more and more money. You're a creative, or if you just want an industry change, trust me, I want you to be successful. Fulton County wants you to be successful. That's why they put this together. This is for A-Town, but it's virtual, so anyone across the world can benefit from it. Don't get overwhelmed if you want to get into screen printing. You can definitely do this. You have to be the type of person that likes processes. And some people don't like that. They just like the immediate results. Screen printing is a process. Now I'm going to host a Zoom Q&A. So watch this video, compile any good questions that you got, because this is your time to throw them at me. So DM me your email, and you'll get all the invites to the Zoom Q&A, and also a heads up on when I drop the other phases. Phase 2 is graphic design. We're going to talk about Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop and the differences in the two and the reasons that you use the two, because I see a lot of people using Photoshop when they should be using Illustrator. And also I'm going to give you a little bit of introduction into graphic design. So tune in to phase 2, and we got 6 phases. I'm going to be doing these all the way to December. This is Artrepreneur, brought to you by EuGene V Byrd III, FutureDeadArtists, and the good folks at Fulton County Arts and Culture. Peace out. Hey, down. All right.